Hi and welcome to today's live reading of Love on the Ropes by Aviva Vaughn, courtesy of Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Prologue. The night everything changed. It's not every day you get run over by a T-Rex while stalking the lug of your life. Abraham Lincoln, I cursed under my breath as a group of costume-clad children ran by, one of them bouncing off me like a pinball. Sorry, mister, said a kid in a blow-up dinosaur costume, after he oriented himself so that his dinosaur face was level with mine. Looking back, it was pretty funny, but I was too focused on the couple 30 feet away to appreciate the humour. After a few moments, the kid walked away yelling, "Hey, wait for me!" It was a good thing I was standing on a sidewalk. I was so distracted by my quarry, if I'd been in the middle of the street, I might have been hit by a car. The funny thing was, I usually loved this time of year. The cooler temperature, the faint smell of fall in the air, the trick-or-treating kiddos. But on that night, Halloween officially became my least favourite holiday. He said they were just friends. I thought, my spiking heartbeat followed by a dull roar in my ears. They laughed as they finished straightening their matching costumes, just another sign of the connection they shared. A connection that felt like betrayal. Maybe it's too late. I sagged beneath the realisation. Maybe too much had passed between us to move forward, but I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her bright laugh and sparkling eyes haunted me. Then again, I'd spent years avoiding an emotional connection. Maybe love just wasn't in the cards for me. I sighed, feeling like a creeper, half hidden behind a tree, watching them enjoy each other's company. How could I possibly make things right with her? What could I do that would prove once and for all that I was the man for her? I rubbed my hand over the rough bark of the tree hiding me, hoping for inspiration. I needed to be dramatic. I needed a grand gesture. I needed to tell her the truth. Taking deep a breath, I set my jaw. No more secrets, I said, on a determined exhale, before squaring my shoulders and stepping out of the shadows. Chapter 1. Badass. Erin. 2 months earlier. I spiraled the final hairpin into place and gave the thick crown-like plaits encircling my scalp a final tug, ensuring my long hair was secure. Ready, I thought, giving the mirror a final glance, happy with how my legs looked in the khaki-coloured mid-thigh shorts. The hours I'd spent at my climbing gym had not only made me mentally stronger, but had sculpted my body into a lightness I hadn't thought possible. Testing the staying power of my braids, I shook my head to the side like I was trying to get water out of my ear. They didn't move a millimetre. Not for the first time, I was grateful that I'd upped my braiding game when I'd moved to Los Angeles 4 years earlier from my native Hawaii. Despite the popularity of long hair in the islands, my knowledge of braiding had been limited to the traditional three-strand, not nearly as secure or decorative as I'd come to prefer. Not only did my double-crown French braids make me feel like a warrior princess, they kept me cool and ensured my hair didn't get in the way as I climbed. I spent a few more seconds inspecting my reflection, then I did a little spin, whipping my head around as I spotted the mirror. I am rocking these shorts. This confidence would have been unthinkable a few years earlier, but had grown a lot since moving to the mainland. I was a different person. Well, at least, mostly a different person. 4 years ago, me? 28 and still living at home with my parents, in the coral pink bedroom of my childhood, working as assistant for an ophthalmologist after I graduated from college. And not just any ophthalmologist, but my mum's ophthalmologist. Dr. Lau couldn't go a month without reminiscing about my braces with neon pink rubber bands, or the time I gave myself asymmetrical bangs, or the Coke bottle glasses I wore before contact lenses saved me. It was grand. My days used to stretch in front of me like the ocean on a flat day, monotonous and unending. In my mind, coral pink was the colour of failure and stagnation. I could pretty much guarantee you that I would never, ever own anything in that particular shade again. New and improved me? Marketing coordinator for America's #1 rated morning drive time radio show, paying my own mortgage on a small but adorable condo in Old Town Pasadena, with the love of a great man. Okay, Great, male. My adorable Shiba Inu Atticus. While I hadn't achieved everything I hoped to by 32, I was a lot closer. Operation Brand New Me was almost complete. The final step was getting my career to the level of a manager. Or director, as I sometimes allowed myself to imagine. Although director Erin Hung didn't sound believable to my ears. Me? A director? Better to stay grounded and realistic and stick with manager. I winced knowing that my cousin Angela, who was really more like a big sister, would not approve of my self-defeating thoughts. Don't limit yourself, Erin. You can do anything. Be anything. Have anything you want, as long as you're willing to put in the effort, was one of her favourite pep talks. And she was an excellent poster child for her mantra. Seeing Angela's life, master's degree, successful business, happy marriage, inspired me to leave Honolulu in pursuit of my own happiness. Hey Erin, you coming? The booming voice of my office spouse, Fern, brought me back to the present as he called through the screen door of my cabin. Yep, just a sec. Grabbing my copper aviators, I banged out the screen door. My roommate Margaret had already headed out with one of her office friends for the next training exercise. Hi, I smiled at Fern, and then inhaled a deep fresh of the pear pine-scented air that was almost new to me. It surprised me every time its sharp, almost medicinal flavour hit my lungs. We were in the small resort town of Big Bear for a weekend-long staff retreat designed to increase teamwork and creativity. The almost 3-hour bus trip to the Alpine village, which was situated in the high mountains on the south edge of the Mojave Desert, was the first time I'd left LA since moving. Fern glanced at my hands. You forgot your water bottle. Right. I pivoted and retrieved my huge stainless steel water bottle. Fern joked that the roughly forearm-sized bottle was my fifth appendage because it was omnipresent. I chalked it up to the lack of humidity in SoCal. I swear I drank 3 times more water on the mainland than I ever had in Hawaii. After I grabbed my bottle, we started walking to the site of our next training exercise. Despite our vast height difference, we fell quickly into a comfortable rhythm, Fern slowing, me speeding up. Fern Haddad was easily the largest person I'd ever known. He wasn't just tall, although he was that at 6 feet 7 inches. He was also broad, and had shoes that looked impossibly big. However, in the months we'd worked together, I'd hired him as our in-house graphic designer almost a year earlier. I'd learned that the heart of a unicorn was housed in this body of a giant, for he was the gentlest person I'd ever met. Do you know what the next challenge is going to be? He asked. Nodding, I smiled. We're climbing telephone poles. A thrill zipped up my spine. He humphed. No wonder you're excited. You're going to scamper up that pole like a squirrel, aren't you? His shoulders slumped, making him look even more solid than usual. Yup, I was practically sipping with excitement. I was itching to climb. We'd been in the mountain for 2 days already, and my 5-days-a-week habit needed an outlet. The retreat was a combination of outdoorsy activities, creativity exercises, and personal development. I considered myself lucky to be included in the group of roughly 70 and had lobbied to get Fern invited. As a graphic designer, he was the most junior person present. I'd argued that getting to know the reporters and producers would help him to better represent our brand visually. Our employer, Universal Public Radio, or UPR, had made quite an investment in this event, transporting about a third of the LA office to the small resort town, about 100 miles northeast of LA. We were staying at a retreat centre that operated as a sleepaway camp during the summer months and reminded me of the classic Hayley Mills version of The Parent Trap. The property was filled with tiny cabins, each structure just large enough for 2 twin cots, 2 bedside tables, and 2 closets. The cabins were so close together that a snoring co-worker 2 cottages away sounded like a baby buffalo being strangled. Needless to say, I hadn't been sleeping well. Just like in other parts of life, the sleeping arrangements had been hierarchical, with more senior employees situated closer to the main buildings where we ate and did all of our exercises. Given our lack of seniority, Fern and I were located in a couple of the cabins furthest away. I didn't mind though. Quiet walks through a pristine pine forest were hardly a punishment. As we walked, dried evergreen needles filled the air with their snapping sound and sharp scent. Although there were a lot of trees, they were spread out, allowing ample amounts of filtered sunlight to cascade down. The sun's rays illuminated the collection of small cabins with a dappled light that made them seem as though they were sprouted out of the forest floor like mushrooms. Did you get a chance to look at the layouts I designed for the Clint's new press kit? Vern asked. I nodded. I liked the one where you included the picture of Clint in the cockpit of his fighter jet. We should play up his Top Gun past. The female listeners think he's sexy. Fern humphed. It's not that there's a lot of competition, he says, referring to the not entirely unfair reputation of public radio hosts as highly educated, trustworthy, and perhaps a little boring. We exchanged guilty looks and giggled. Well, I giggled. Even Fern's giggle sounded more like a chuckle with his deep voice. Together, Fern and I were the dedicated marketing team for UPR's biggest show, Wake Up America, referred to as WUA or WUA, and we'd won high marks the last 2 weeks, overseeing the unexpected change in main hosts. After a decade as one of the most beloved voices on American radio, WUA host Devin Lopez had unexpectedly quit the show to take over a television anchor position that paid 5 times more, I'm sure, to launch her into Main Street fame. Clint Davenport had easily slid into the top show's spot after 8 years as the show's West Coast correspondent and substitute host. His irreverent humour and lazy self-confidence had earned him legions of fans even before he took Devin's place. His past as a fighter pilot hadn't hurt either. So far, Fern and I had managed the transition gracefully, quickly updating the website and issuing press releases, although there was still a lot of work to be done. Has he told you his call sign yet? Fern asked. I scribbled. No, he's been obnoxiously obstinate about that. We might have to issue the press kit without that fun little factoid. I wonder how long it would take to win over the famously private former lieutenant. Well gregarious on the air, in person he guarded his personal life jealousy, making it hard for me to do my job. And it wasn't like I could interview any of the other staff members, because Clint wasn't the type of person who fostered work friendships. Whereas many of the reporters grabbed coffee or lunch together, or even drinks after work, Clint never did any of that. He ate his lunch alone in his office every day, and he left promptly at 2 p.m, like he may turn into a pumpkin if he stayed a minute later. So how could I update the man's bio if he refused to answer my questions? I thought it would be easy to get him to open up. People usually love telling me their secrets. I'm not sure what it was about me. Maybe my short stature or my innocent-looking face, the combination of which made me very approachable. Add that to the fact that Clint and I had known each other for a while should have made him more forthcoming. While we hadn't worked together closely, in my 2 years as WUA's marketing coordinator, we'd had our fair share of professional interactions. We'd even shared the occasional laugh in the office kitchen. Are you cold? Fern says, cutting into my consternation. His word made me realise I had been rubbing my bare arms. I didn't think it'd be so cool up here. September was still a hot month in LA, and I hadn't packed appropriately for the change in elevation. My wardrobe of shorts and floaty muumuus meant that the one sweatshirt I'd brought, a black hoodie with a rainbow cartoon of singer Israel Kamakazuyo, who was the patron saint of Hawaii, had been in heavy rotation. But the previous night I'd gotten a gob of roasted marshmallow on it during the starlit campfire roast, and it was still drying back at my cabin. Yeah, we're a lot higher up here. In a few more months the town will turn into a ski resort. I shivered. He gripped his windbreaker tighter as though thinking about the snow had made him colder. Do you ski or snowboard? I shivered again. No way, I don't like the cold. I'm an island girl, remember? He shrugged. It's fun. It feels like flying. Besides, it's not cold once you have all the gear on. I arched a brow, but reserved judgment. He glanced at his hands, clutching his jacket. Do you want my windbreaker? I shook my head. I'll warm up as soon as we start moving. Thanks, though. As we approached the designated forest clearing, we found the other UPR employees huddling at the bases of a dozen telephone pole-like apparatuses. Many were staring up at the top of the poles, mouth agape. Looks like we found the right place. Fern's voice held a hint of trepidation. The looks of dismay didn't surprise me. Most of the group were 10 to 20 years older than me and not particularly athletic. The few who exercised regularly limited it to hiking and yoga. There were a handful of notable exceptions. Clint was a long-distance runner and still very fit at 39. And Jacinda Hill, one of the show's youngest senior editors at 44, was a triathlete. And Fern, who'd played basketball his entire life, although he didn't seem to enjoy it that much. I suspected he played just because it was expected of his height. Off to the side of the pole near me, Clint was talking to the show's senior producer, Yolanda Sousa, an intimidating, stylish 60-ish blonde who reminded me of Glenn Close, cool, calculating, and as intimidating AF. In contrast to her rigidly upright posture, Clint's slender 6'1" frame hunched in lazy self-assuredness, as though his spine were trying to form an S while he listened. Inwardly, I rolled my eyes. I don't know why, but Clint's inches-thick glare of self-confidence always riled me up. His lazy smile seemed to imply that he was the smartest person in the room, as if his status as host wasn't enough to make people pay attention to him. The fact that he was a Rhodes Scholar, had the cheekbones of a runway model, and the ass of a Greek statue were further cause for annoyance. My brain seemed to short-circuit whenever he entered the room, which infuriated me now that I was spending so much time in his presence. Clint turned my way, his eyes widening just the tiniest bit as he took note of me. I attempted to rearrange my face into a neutral expression. His smug chin lift told me I failed. My face heated. I skimbled and glanced quickly away, the hair on the back of my neck prickling self-consciously. I needed to learn to immunise myself from Clint's swagger, worthy of a Top Gun fighter pilot, which, of course, on top of everything else, he'd actually been.